Hi, and welcome to another installment of Math Basics, Mr. Besh. Today we're talking sample space and tree diagrams. We're going to use this example model to go through and be able to determine which of the answers best represents. We're going to be using Rodney. Rodney's flipping a coin and spinning a spinner. So let's get to this right away. All right. I want to teach you how you read a sample space and tree diagram, how they're related to one another, how they have a little bit of a difference, but they basically give you a visual representation of all the chances or all the outcomes that can possibly happen here. Okay, so first thing that I read here is that Rodney's flipping a coin. That's the first thing he's doing. When you flip a coin, you have two possible outcomes, heads or tails. Then it says Rodney's spinning the spinner. When you look at a spinner, you want to make sure that all the slices of the pie are about the same. Because if that's the case, then the probability of spinning red, blue, and green are all the same. So that means there are three chances that can happen there that are all fair. To determine a total outcome, you take the outcomes for the first event, which is flipping a coin, multiplied by the outcomes of the second event, which is spinning the spinner. And now what we're looking for is that there are 6 possible outcomes that can happen when you flip a coin once and you spin this spinner once. If you look down below, they're giving us abbreviations, H for heads and T for tails. And then R stands for red, B stands for blue, and G stands for green. We need to choose which of the models down here below best represent the sample space. Okay, so let's do it. Let's talk about these and let's go through and see why some of these are invalid. Okay, so the first one I'm going to go to is A. To explain to you why A is a bad choice is right here. That's the first thing that came to my eyes. RB. RB means red and blue based on what they tell us right there in the directions. I cannot flip a coin and get red or blue. I can spin the spinner and get red. I can spin the spinner and get blue, but I can't flip a coin and get either red or blue. To get that result right there, you would have to spin the spinner twice, and the problem says we're only spinning it once. So A is invalid. Let's take a look at B. When I come down here to B, this is an example of a tree diagram, where A was an example of a sample space. B is an example of a tree diagram. So let's talk about how you read the tree diagram. The first thing that you want to go to is you want to go right here to where it starts. This R says that we are spinning the spinner and getting red. Now, I got a couple problems with this one. First off, he's flipping the coin first. So we should be starting out with heads or tails. That's one of the reasons why I know this is not going to be the answer, but let's just continue. Technically, this is kind of backwards, where he spins the spinner and gets red, and then as I go to this branch here, I go to H. That means he flips and gets a head. Well, at least that's an outcome that could happen. He could spin and get red and flip a coin and get heads. But then here's where it gets interesting. R and T could happen, but then look at the next part. R and B, R and G, really? Once again, we're back to the red and blue again, which is not valid. You cannot flip a coin and spin the spinner and get 2 colors when you're only spinning the spinner once. Okay? So then we come up to C, and C is another sample space. Now, there are 2 problems again with C. I'm going to use this one right here and focus on this. TG and GT are exactly the same. That's my first problem, all right? When you flip a coin, when you get the T, the G, that means you flip tails and got green, and below it, GT means you spin green and get tails. That is the exact same thing. So what they're doing in this problem is they are counting an outcome, not just once, but they're counting the outcome twice, and that is a no-no. But we also know that he's flipping the coin first. So because he's flipping the coin first, the GT part here should be disqualified. So C is also invalid. And what that does is that leaves D to be the answer to this. So let me explain why this is the answer. Again, we come down to another tree diagram, okay? So now if you notice, the first thing that can happen is flipping a coin. That's why we start out with the H and the T, respectfully. Then once we go and we spin the spinner, we can get heads in red, heads in blue, heads in green, and vice versa, tails in red, tails in blue, tails in green. These are my 6 outcomes that can happen. If I wanted to recreate this or write this as a sample space, this is how this would go. Starting with heads, I can get heads in red, heads in blue, heads in green. Then I go to the tails, tails in red, tails in blue, tails in green. And again, you count them up and you got 6 possible outcomes. So one being the sample space when I write them out using the letters that are there, or if I wanted to branch them out using my tree diagram, okay? Either way is a great visual representation to show you all the possible probability outcomes that can happen. I hope you found this both helpful